Hey, wealth warriors. Are you ready to redefine wealth and master your money mindset? Welcome to Women of Wealth. I'm your Gen X host, Hollywoods Gray.
And I'm your millennial host, Ali Ramo. Today, we'll be discussing the impact community involvement has on you and your business with Mimi Tran.
Mimi is a financial professional, former educator, and community leader who believes wealth is built through both financial literacy and collective care. Based in San Diego, though she's not there very often, she supports educators and small business owners with retirement and protection planning while remaining deeply rooted in nonprofit and community work.
So, to get us started, Mimi, tell our audience a little bit about your journey and what you're currently doing now.
Yes. Hi, Ali and Holly. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's such a privilege to be on Women of Wealth. And as Holly said, I was an educator working in elementary schools and middle schools in San Diego and Chula Vista. But after some serious health concerns, I had to pivot in my career, and I now am a retirement and life insurance specialist. Additionally, I serve as a proud vice president on the board of the Teaching and Learning Collaborative, and I work with Viet Voices to promote Vietnamese businesses and culture in San Diego. So, and I travel a lot, but that's just for fun.
That's what I was saying. You're not in San Diego very often. So what inspired you to make well, neither am I. Yes. What inspired you to make the change from educator to life insurance agent?
Yes. So I actually love this question. I left education for a few different reasons, but going into the financial services industry specifically, my parents were both immigrants from Vietnam. My dad was a refugee, my mom was an immigrant. And that really like impacts my story because as a first generation Vietnamese American, I had to really kind of like learn how to navigate being here in the United States by myself a lot. And my parents like are really doing their best to just like raise their three kids and have them go to college. And so with that, like the support that I've had in my life to get to where I'm at is something that I'm so grateful for and that I always feel is important when thinking about like my actions and what I do. So when I left education, and I think about my parents and them having a business and raising three daughters, but yet, like, we would never talk about life insurance or retirement planning at the dinner table. Like the idea of like financial literacy wasn't something that I like really understood until I became a teacher and had my own like financial professional I started working with to understand things. And then I realized like you just don't know what you don't know. And I'm not the only one on that boat. I know that there are so many other people out there who just like kind of kind of just expect things to just like work out. And I'm just like, no, we've got a plan for it. So going into the financial services industries like just made a lot of sense for me because I just think it's something that I found really important and was lacking. And I know that's something that a lot of people probably need support in as well.
Yeah, for sure. And, you touched briefly on, how being a Vietnamese woman has impacted your story. How has that impacted your story as a financial service agent?
Yeah. I'm a life insurance agent. So a lot of what we do is helping people with getting life insurance for themselves and their family. I grew up with my parents thinking life insurance is a scam. They're just like, why would we pay for this? Like, you only pay for this and you only get it when you die. And I was just like, okay, whatever. And then when I was in my early 20s, one of my older cousins passed away. Actually, no, I think I might have been like 18 or 19. One of my older cousins passed away. She was only 24, you
Mm.
know? So for me, it was just like, you never really know when you need that. And her before she passed away, she was her family had to care for her. She was like in a coma for like years. And so that's expensive. And then I see all these GoFundMe's that people will post, and it's always just so heartbreaking because it's just like, I'm a college student. Like, I don't know what I can do to help and support this. And I see that a lot in my community is for a long time, I just thought like, oh, okay, well, if someone passed away, like we just post a GoFundMe. I'm like, that's not the norm. Like that's not what we should be doing, and so for me as like a Vietnamese American woman coming in and knowing that this is kind of like the idea behind life insurance, I was just like, that's got to change. Like we've got to do something for our future generations, because I understand that like the generation that came here had to start with building, but like I'm the first generation that was born here. I get to continue the steps that my parents have laid for me. And so I'm just going to continue to build this for the next generations, for at least my family. And I know that there are so many other families that need that as well. So that's I think being a Vietnamese American first generation, like my thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it happens quite a bit depending on what your roots are, as far as people thinking that life insurance isn't something that they want to invest in. But I mean, nowadays people have more in life insur or more insurance on their cell phones than they do on themselves, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, these things only cost maybe $500 or whatever, or you can get free if you get two and you go to T-Mobile or something like that. When they're having a special, you get 2 lines for free and then you get a $300 bill. But life
Yeah.
insurance, I mean, so it's so affordable, especially if you start when you're younger. Like you're saying, your cousin was 24,
Yeah.
right? Before we move on to really jump into the community, now just speak to the level that you're comfortable. This isn't one of the questions that we pre-sent to you. So you were talking a little bit about having some health issues that kind of got you out of teaching and into this profession. I don't necessarily care so much about you talking about what the health issues are, but how did this opportunity get the option to not have a 9 to 5? What are some of the benefits of being in this position and still being able to make yourself and keep yourself healthy?
Holly, let me tell you. So when I was a teacher, right, I think it is such an undervalued job. Teaching is hard because it's like you go in and people are like, "Oh, you just like play with kids all day." No, let me tell you, there's curriculum. We got to work with parents. There's a lot of collaboration. I'm also like apparently everybody's psychologist and their nurse, like checking in on people while I'm on break. It is a completely involved job, thankless job. And you pour so much into it. I was teacher of the year in 2018, 2 years before I left teaching. And I ended up leaving because it just felt so heavy. Like the responsibility was so heavy. And it wasn't that I couldn't shoulder it, like I was really like fighting for equity in education and all of this, but it was starting to really affect my health. And I remember when I would ask for days to go see the doctor, like, get subs, sick leave that we're entitled to, I
Right.
would feel so much guilt because I'm like, I am abandoning my kids. I'm leaving the responsibility of my students to other people. Sometimes, if there weren't enough subs, students would get split between other classrooms. And now the responsibility falls on other teachers. There was always so much guilt behind that I was just like, it's almost not worth doing. I'll see about getting an appointment over break, putting my health aside because of the guilt, because of it being more work to create lesson plans, communicating with parents while I'm not there, just like meant that I needed something more flexible in my next career, right?
Yeah.
I needed something where I could at a moment's notice be like, I'm not feeling well, I need to take today to rest, or I need to take today to go see a doctor for an emergency something.
Right.
The other thing I learned too is with teaching, it was just so involved that I didn't have a lot of time for me to like do what made me happy. And I really believe in self-care, and for me, self-care is being on a plane and going somewhere new. And so I get to do that. And the benefits of being in this career for me has just been something that I don't know that I would have believed 10 years ago. Before entering this career, I just thought like, oh, like I had to go into a job that would pay me benefits and I would work there until I retire, and then I live a little bit and then I die. Like I'm like, that's my life trajectory. And it's just not necessarily the case. Like finding this career has opened up an entirely new vision of what my life could be. And I am just really living my best life out here. Like I am working really hard because that's kind of just who I am. I'm able to participate in working with these nonprofits because they're important to me and I finally have time for it. I have way too many hobbies and I travel a lot. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Mimi, you're an inspiration to me because I see how active you are, and that's why I thought this topic would be of community involvement would be great for you because not only are you part of these nonprofits, but your hobbies are also building a community as well. And I think it's really beautiful, and I think it's really important for people's mental health also to be in community. Like there's a Netflix documentary, it's called Join or Die, and you actually cut your death or your life expectancy in half when you stop going to community meetings or like some type of involvement. And so I just think it's really important, and it trickles out and betters other aspects of your life other than, your rock climbing friends. They become other friends that can help you in other ways. And so I want to go into that. I mean, I briefly touched on some, but what do you think are some significant benefits of being part of a community for individuals and business owners?
I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said that like there's just so many different types of communities. That's true, right? Like I rock climb, I do yoga, I play pickleball, and that's just like the exercise, and then there's also like the community within like the nonprofit space, things that are important to me, like education, right? Like I'm in an education nonprofit, and then there's also like identity, like who I am as like a Vietnamese American person, a Vietnamese American woman. Like there is a Vietnamese American like nonprofit, So um I feel like these days there's just these spaces because everybody wants to feel like their presence matters, and I think it's really important for us to not feel alone because I for the longest time I sat alone in this whole like, oh, I'm like this Vietnamese American woman and I feel like this and it's just seems so different from everybody else, but that's just not the case. Like when I find like-minded people or people who have the similar experiences as me, it's so beautiful in helping me feel empowered, and in feeling like I'm not alone in my experiences. And that could be for just about anything. Personally, I just love making friends everywhere I go. And so the idea of like building a community everywhere is just like so cool to me. Like I get to benefit from all these different communities because anywhere I go, I have a friend and I don't feel alone. Um, but your question specifically asking about can you ask it again?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just on a tangent out here.
I love it. I love it. Significant benefits of being part of a community for individuals and business owners. So, I mean, for you as an individual, it's really important, that you've got someone somewhere that you can go visit, and that makes life fun. We're all really good at jet setting, but
Yeah.
Mimi, you're really good at doing it by yourself, but then you get to go see friends in other places. So you're not really doing it by yourself. You're doing it with your community,
Yeah.
your international community too. Um,
Yeah.
but so significant benefits, being part of a community, let's just touch on business owners. How can it
Yeah.
benefit business owners? I mean, you have Viet Voices and you're sharing Vietnamese businesses. So what
Yes.
other benefits?
Yeah. So with Viet Voices, the work I do there is I did a little bit of grant writing. And then I also am in a mini series called More Than Pho, where we go and we interview these business owners so that they tell their story about how their business came to be and the impact that they have on the community in San Diego. And then also share the food, And this project really stemmed from this idea of needing to be seen because a lot of people don't realize that there is a little Saigon in San Diego, in City Heights, which is just like on University and El Cajon. But when people think University and El Cajon, they're thinking like North Park, like that area, cross over the freeway. And here's like this little neighborhood that no one ever goes to. But there's so much culture there and food. So for me, it's like that's important. And it's important for business owners to find what matters for them because by going in and like creating these relationships with these business owners, as someone who is a community member, it builds trust. It builds credibility, right? Like they can see that I'm actually there to support them without asking for anything in return. And that's important, right? Like when you are constantly just asking people to go into your business, to buy from you, to support you, like they don't see that as a, I mean, it's reciprocal in that they're getting some sort of service, but then what's different from them doing that versus going to someone else offering the same service? Connection is so important. And I think that when business owners and entrepreneurs lean into their community, find a community that they can like really get behind and be present with without expecting something in return, I think that builds trust.
I think trust is also really important these days, or I think we're very hesitant to have trust in people. And I mean, at least for myself, it's really hard for me to like trust people if they're marketing to me. And so I think it is really important, you get to know these business owners, and you can support them financially. But if these business owners aren't involved in their community, then how do you build that connection and that trust? I think trust, you hit it on the head, is really important, especially nowadays.
Well, I think with AI and everything, so many people are like, "Are you real?" When you answer
Mhm.
the phone or when you call somebody. I mean, I have had voicemails that say, "Please hold for a live representative." I'm like, "You're calling me. Why would I hold for a live representative?" You know what I mean? It's like, give
Yeah.
me a break, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that. I want to talk to a real person. I want to have real connection. I want to have real conversation. I don't want to talk to an AI bot. I mean, it's okay if I'm searching for something and it's like I ask for help and it's somebody that is helping me and that's how the AI bot is trained. I don't have a problem with that. But if I have a specific question and they can't answer it, I want to talk to a live person. You know?
Yeah.
I think that's a great benefit that you bring to the table, Mimi, is that you're able to get out there in your community and really be able to connect with people. Let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the involvement in the community that you're building. It looks like something that you're building, which is not just in San Diego, but is going to be across the US, and how you have these experiences that have changed in the last 10 years and being involved in their community. And how does that impact potentially not just the local businesses and nonprofit, but the relationships that you're making across the nation as well? And even not just across the nation, but also internationally.
I think the stat that Ali pulled is that involvement in community groups has been lowering in the
Mhm.
US. Well, my thought on that is that, you know, it's important to stay plugged in. I understand why it's dropping though. Like I can tell you right now, like it's not a surprise that people who work in these spaces get paid significantly less. Funding is dropped. When I was grant writing, that was really difficult. There was a fund that one of our organizations has received year after year, but with budgets being cut, we did not get the funding for that. And so now we have to like find other ways of supporting this project. And that's just something that also shows that a lot of times nonprofits are not consistent because they're so dependent on grants, you know? Um, so I do see that impacting businesses because if businesses are leaning into community and leaning into the support that comes from these nonprofits, because let's be honest, right? Like a lot of times, like the city or government will put out things to help businesses, but if the businesses don't know how to access that, they're not getting that support. Like for me, the Vietnamese community, there's a language barrier, like there's just so many barriers that prevent these businesses from getting what's out there. When ERC was happening, I had to put together a workshop with Viet Voices to tell them about it and to help them with it. And then there was like that trust piece too, where they're just like, how do I know this is real? But
Right.
that's for me like what I see. And as we cut funding, the businesses that have been harmed, or the programs that have like been doing all of this impact but like lacking the resources, are just going to continue to see less. We're just going to see less of them, and that's pretty terrible, I think. But
Yeah.
hopefully that changes.
So do
Yeah.
you think then that we will start to see more community engagement or community, just events, different programs, so that instead of I don't know how hard it is to market for a small business, it like online, they're competing nationally with a national marketing as well. So to have increase in community events, either in person or online, do you think that that's necessary in order for small businesses to stay alive?
I do think marketing is so important, right? When we speak about staying with the times, right now, people are on social media all the time. They're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I guess it just depends what generation you're in, or who you're trying to market to. But so much of that has to go into research too. But um, unless like people are posting their own marketing material, they've got to hire someone for marketing, and that can be expensive. But I think that's also something that I think about a lot when I think about what nonprofits I want to support out there, because
Mm,
there are some really big nonprofits that like honestly just have really good marketing, you know?
yeah.
And a lot of the smaller ones that are out there doing the work may not have a big marketing budget because they'd rather put those funds somewhere else.
Mm.
So that's something I think about a lot when it comes to marketing. But I do think that marketing in general is a very important um, part of the nonprofit and entrepreneurial business.
I think that's really important. And I think that those companies that do have the international marketing, kind of like, whenever we roll out new products, it takes us a while to get the international marketing going, the Spanish, the Vietnamese, Mandarin, those types of languages, getting everything translated and everything. So I think that that could also help if there's, especially if there's a good translator that can help with, those types of materials. Because I know from working in Chula Vista when I first, that's where I grew up. So when I first started in this business, a lot of my clients were in Chula Vista and Sweetwater and some of those other districts that have a large Spanish speaking community. And there's just a lot of people who want to speak about their finances in their native tongue. So I'm sure that's the same with Vietnamese. I know it is with the Filipinos that I know that I've worked with, as well as, the Hispanics. They want to speak in Spanish for those particular investments. Is that something that you feel like you have been able to really, not corner a market or anything like that, but you're able to really benefit your business owners because you are able to speak with them in their own language?
It has, but I I think like with what you're saying, for me, the way I think about it is I always just want to meet people where they're at. And a lot of that could be language. But there's a lot of times in my own business where I've worked with someone who maybe they prefer someone who like speaks Spanish. I will pass them on to someone who can help them.
Absolutely.
Ultimately it's about like whoever needs the service. And when it comes to business owners that I've worked with, um, yes, language is important. There are business owners that I've interviewed for the More Than Pho project where we did the entire interview in Vietnamese, you
That's
know,
great.
and then we had to hire someone to translate later on, because when I think about it, it's not so much like what resources I like can give them, but it's more of like what do they need from me. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that like quite makes sense or like translates as well as it does in my head, but I guess what I'm saying is that like it's more about what they need than like what I can provide. And if I can't provide what they
Yeah.
need, I will find someone to do so.
Well, the other thing that I was thinking is, we've interviewed several people in the past that have had some great resources, and that a lot of times the money is there, people just don't know how to access it. So even though there may be some programs that close down for your people that your community, there also might be programs that now have opened up too. So I think the education piece of it is very important. I don't know any Vietnamese CPAs, but we did interview a CPA recently, and she was going over a lot of the benefits that were coming out, with the new tax plan and everything that got written into legislation last year. And so some of that funding may go away from the current channel that it's in, but it may be available again in another channel. And so how do you think is the best way to get that information out to different communities when you do find, oh, look, here's a way they could benefit? or if I found it and I'd be like, oh, hey, Mimi, this could benefit your group, like what's a great way for us to get that out to your community?
Yeah, if we're talking about nonprofits, there, like I said, there is a nonprofit for everything, right?
Mhm.
Within San Diego, I can name like 3 or 4 different Vietnamese nonprofits. And I would just want to look at their mission to see what it is that they stand for and if it aligns with what I need, right? So when it came to getting information about ERC out to the Vietnamese community, I knew that is a community that was not receiving the news or the resources to
Right.
get access to this support. So I reached out to Viet Voices, and at the time they were called Viet Vote, and like their whole mission is of getting Vietnamese people out voting so that there's like
Mhm.
more Vietnamese representation.
Sure.
And so that there's more of like a pull for what Vietnamese people need in San Diego. So I knew
Mhm.
that like it kind of aligned with what they were looking at. And so when I like pitched the idea to them and I was just telling them like, hey, like this opportunity is here. I want to support the community. Like, is there a way we can partner up? Like I think just like communicating and asking. And then that was
Mhm.
how I like my first interaction with Viet Voices, is doing that. And then since then, I've been on so many projects with them and have increased my involvement in that community a lot. So um, if there's a community that you want to connect to, I would say just do a quick Google search on what exists in San Diego that could
Mhm.
align and just reach out because they're always looking for ways of supporting their community.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
great advice for anywhere. If you're somewhere else in the United States, you don't feel like you have a big community of whatever it is. I mean, even when I first got into financial services, I went to my first women in insurance and financial services, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these are my people, because I was surrounded by men. And then
Yeah.
now, like, I have a lot of women on my team. I have my own community of women of wealth, and now I don't have to worry about necessarily going and finding that community because I've created that community now. You know what I mean? So it's like
Mhm.
definitely anybody who's listening to this show, I think that's great advice. If there's something, they always talk about find a need and fill it. And if you really see something in your community where there's a hole, then go and find the community partners that you can partner with to really benefit that community. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, and like on top of that, I think this whole episode isn't really necessarily how can business owners get involved with their community. It's more about as community members, we need to start getting involved as community members, and it will support our business owner long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing I
Our
do want to say too is that like when I think about like business owners being involved with nonprofits, it's like how can you expect a community to support you if you're not supporting the community? So
Mhm.
even as business owners, I love going into like a restaurant and seeing like photos of like a local like little league team or something, like they're out there supporting something that's important to them.
Right. Yeah, I know. It is definitely something that we look for. So my husband dresses up as the Grinch, like actually has the costume. He isn't just the Grinch during Christmas, but he actually dresses up like the Grinch. And so this year, this is the second year we've been involved with this organization, but he actually went and delivered the toys. And while he was delivering the toys to the Children's Cancer Center, where we were collecting for, um, he said, "Hey, do you need a Grinch?" And they're like, "Okay, what do you mean?" So he like showed him a picture and everything. They're like, "Yeah, we could do, pictures with the Grinch." They're doing pictures with Santa, pictures with the Grinch, and we just met so many great people while we were out there volunteering because he was in his costume, but I was, helping coordinate getting people in to take pictures with them and whatnot. And also, our son came with us, which is really important for our son to see that, not everybody has the type of lifestyle that he has. And these organizations are there to help families when they're going through different, trials in their life. And that's just one community partner that we're involved with. But I think it's really great to be able to go in and give back. I mean, it doesn't always mean that you're giving hundreds and thousands of dollars to a community. It might be just spending a Sunday morning dressed as the Grinch.
It's
And that could
time,
be
you know?
it could be
Mhm.
way more valuable than, giving thousands. I mean, I'm sure every nonprofit out there would take the thousands thousands of dollars as well. But to have actual volunteers is also important because then people feel
Absolutely.
seen and heard, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I also MC for the Lunar Festival every year here in San Diego. I've done it for 2 years already, and I'm going to do it again this year. And all I'm donating is my time, and I get to connect with all these people, but also represent myself as like a Vietnamese American first generation, here in San Diego. Like, it's great. I get it.
Yes.
Volunteering is good.
Holly, can we get you dressed as Cindy Lou Who next year and Jackson is Max?
I don't think we'll get Jackson as Max, especially next year, because he's going to be taller than me by next year. But I'm sure we could find somebody to fill in. Maybe we'll have Toby go as Max.
There you
our
go.
dog. Yeah, he's not quite as big as Jackson. So Jackson probably would be better dressed as like the bodyguard or something. I don't know. By next Christmas, he's definitely going to be taller than me. So yeah, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Cindy Lou Who, I could definitely do that. Definitely.
Love that.
Well, Mimi, first of all, I have one more question for you, but then after that, we do our speed round or lightning round. And so Allie will do that. We've been talking about, how to get connected with your community and all that. What do you think do you have any suggestions other than like, doing a Google search? What are some ways to get plugged into your community if you're a new business owner, or if you have some ideas, like you talked about doing a Google search on what it is, but specifically culturally, if it's a cultural community service person or nonprofit, if it has to do with like your heritage or that kind of stuff that you've been talking about, what are some actionable items that the business owners can do to get involved in those communities?
I would say just show up. Like there are events that are happening all the time, put on by if it's cultural, right? There are cultural celebrations, cultural events, eat at the restaurants, just connect with that community, and then it will just come together. If you want to fast pace it, find the nonprofit, Google it. For me, like when I find community and other things like my hobbies, you just show up, and then you just meet people, and then you just build that community there.
Well, let's go into the lightning round then, Allie.
All right, let's do this. All right, one word to describe your leadership style.
Okay, well, I hope they agree with this, but I always try to come in with a really empathetic mindset, meeting people where they're at, supporting them without shame.
I think we could all agree that that's on brand for you. What's your go-to productivity hack?
There's so many. I could say my calendar. I do live on that thing, but I would say body doubling is so important for me. If someone is there and just sitting there and doing nothing, I can get so much more done than when I'm completely by myself.
Coffee or tea?
Strawberry matcha.
Favorite business book or podcast you recommend?
I think How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is one that is really important for any business owner. I read it every year.
Yes, I've listened to that audiobook a few times. A money myth you wish you would go away forever?
That life insurance is a scam. That one's gotta go.
If you could sit down and have lunch with any woman of wealth, past or present, who would it be?
Well, obviously you two. But if I can't pick you two, Marky Reed, I think, was on your podcast a while ago about like CEOs. And I'm just like, what a boss woman. Like, I'd be so into that. Or the chef. Like you had one with the chef. I feel like lunch with her would be delicious.
You guys would you and your personalities, you would talk all day probably.
Okay, so Chef Nikki will be in Vegas the week of our convention. So I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to see her or how it's going to happen, but I'm going to put something together.
Okay.
That's easy. I got you on that one. It might not be lunch, but it'll be something.
Okay.
Look, Mimi showed up, and now she's possibly going to meet Chef Nikki.
And Marquis, that's easy too. I can introduce you. No problem. Those
Okay,
two are
but
done and done.
I will clarify, the woman of wealth means like celebrity women, like Michelle Obama or like Oprah Winfrey or, like,
Well, Chef Nikki is kind of a celebrity, at
but
least in
yes.
Thailand.
So that's why we said past or present. So anyone else on that will
Anyone else?
they didn't have to be on our podcast. So just
Okay,
a
I know
woman
that this
of
one is
wealth.
a controversial one, but I just subscribed to Masterclass and I just like listened to her masterclass and I was just like, she's actually very knowledgeable and smart with how she brands. You know who I'm talking about? Kim
Kim
Kardashian.
Kardashian.
Oh, Kim Kardashian, yeah.
She
Smart
just like
as
brands
she is.
herself so like intentionally, you know?
They did a really good
Funny.
job marketing that masterclass because I got that ad on Instagram as well.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that some of those Kardashians, they are right up there with building a brand, and they did a really good job. Their mom would probably be the one that I would sit down with because she's the one who's the mastermind behind it all, if you ask me.
Yeah.
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 She
Yeah.
got them to use every asset they had, and even if they don't own it yet, to use it
Yeah.
as well.
Yep. She really
You got to
set
get
it
it
up.
built on or built in. You can do that too.
She's an example of like someone who like creates her own like financial literacy curriculum. You know, she's like, I'm not following anyone else's plan.
Exactly. For sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mimi, for being on. If someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. They can either find me on Instagram. That's where you find all of my like community and traveling stories. It's at mimosas with 4 A's. So it's MIMOSAAAS. Or you can email me at mtran@appreciationfinancial.com.
Yay. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you for coming on, Mimi.
Of
Yes,
course,
thank
of course.
you.
Thanks for having me.